How would a 20 school Big Ten look like in the future? How would it be structured? Welcome to Peek Around the Corner with your host, Greg Flugar. And before we talk about the episode today, I just want to give my heartfelt thanks to all of you who have reached out yesterday. It was overwhelming. It was overwhelming for me and my wife. We appreciate all your beautiful comments, all your support. That's why we created this show, by the way, to share this game that we love so much, college football, to you all. I want to thank Brady, for Los Angeles Times reporter McCullough, who wrote the beautiful story in the Los Angeles Times about how we broke the story of how USC called the Big Ten. He mentioned some other stories that we broke during the past. I want to give my special thanks to the great Ryan Burns from Gopher Illustrated for all of his support throughout the years. This wasn't just a one-time event, but the USC calling the Big Ten was a huge event. The story was so beautifully written by Brady. I can't imagine having those types of writing skills. We are going to talk about, and again, this is like the 10th time I've teased this, but now you kind of understand why we couldn't talk about the USC to Big Ten before. We are going to push that episode off a bit because we want to talk about college football, right? When we do that episode of us finding out that USC called the Big Ten and things that were going on those months, we're going to get into the details, all the details that we can possibly share, the emotions of it, the information, the cloak and dagger part of it. Yeah, there is cloak and dagger stuff. There's stuff going on right now that's cloak and dagger. So, like stuff going on right now, not just within the Big Ten either, but so we'll talk about that whole event on a later episode. We'll make sure we let you know. Hit the subscribe button. You get notified on a show that's coming up. But so we'll do that. So thank you all. I can't possibly start this episode without thanking you all for all the support you have given us. As you can tell, we are overwhelmed, but we will continue on. And today we're going to talk about what does the Big Ten Conference look like with 20 schools. And we are going to use the model. For this episode, we're going to use the model that Stanford, Oregon, Washington, and California will come into the conference for the 2024 football season. Okay? This is the model that we're going to use today. As you know, yesterday we talked about the Stanford, Oregon, Washington. We at Peek Around the Corner have been in on that a couple days after the announcement of UCLA, USC. We explained why there was only the USC, UCLA part that happened on June 30th. You can go back to our previous episodes on our YouTube channel and you'll see the explanations of all that. But today we're going to push forward and we're going to talk about what does the model look like for that 20 school, and we're going to use California, USC, UCLA, and Stanford. We're going to use that part. Before we get to that, I just want to talk about this Brett McMurphy interview he had on the Unsportsmanlike Conduct show yesterday. And if you go back to our show yesterday, called Big Ten 16 to 20. If you go back to that episode 15, we mirror each other pretty much exactly. So I think for the first time in months, there's a consensus of what's about to happen. Again, that there's a difference with the California part, University of California part, but we are saying we might have missed it. But let's go through what Brett McMurphy said real quick here. He said, and you can go back to the Unsportsmanlike Conduct and listen to that interview with Brett McMurphy, reporter from Action Network, as you all know. He says USC and UCLA are not going to be put on an island. Those are the words we've been using for a couple months, or since June 30th, right? And he again said Washington, Oregon, Stanford, California are the targets. Now, we had it Washington, Oregon, Stanford, Notre Dame, and of course, McMurphy would agree. All the reporters, everyone would agree with Notre Dame being the target. Doesn't look like the Big Ten has landed that target yet. Okay. Basically said the pack is dying, which we would agree. I mean, when the four schools that we were mentioning in this video go to the Big Ten, you can see your mark. Taking Utah, Colorado, Arizona, and Arizona State, if all those are available, and we believe they will be for the Big 12. We have mentioned Arizona as an extreme long shot for the Big 10, but those 4 schools going to the Big 12, basically the pack is no longer exists. Okay? Oregon State, Washington State will probably have that Mountain West option, a conference option. McMurphy went into how there's going to be there's escalators built in this Big Ten contract. Therefore, with the additions of Washington, Oregon, Stanford, California, everyone sort of knows everyone has the vision of how that's all going to look like. Okay, the slices may become smaller for the current 16 teams in the Big Ten. McMurphy says that's probably still doable. This is what we've been saying from the beginning. And there's because of all the reasons we've gone to in the previous episode, but we're not going to spend time on this video about that. So let's get into, I just want to put that out there because this is what's happening. This is what's being reported now from national reporters. Okay. This is building. We have told you about this window of August 15th, October 15th. We said that in July. We're 5 days into the window, and that window is hot. There's a lot of, they're gaming out what the Big Ten structure will look like. And that's why we're talking about it today on episode 16. What does it look like? Okay, let's talk about football. Football is the bus that's driving all this realignment. It's the major bus that's driving all this consolidation of content. Okay. What does a 20-school football conference look like in the Big Ten with Oregon, Stanford, Washington, and California? We believe that it still remains divisionless. There will be no divisions, at least to begin with, here in the new Big Ten of 20 schools. No divisions. Now you're probably saying, Greg, this is the opposite of what you've been saying. You've been talking about regionalization of a super conference, having sports being regionalized. Yes, that's true, but not for football. At least at the beginning of this new Big Ten. At the beginning. There might be changes years down the road, and we're going to get that in this episode. But for the beginning, we still believe there'll be no divisions. One of the aspects of this one of the main difficult tasks that Kevin Warren will have, along with athletic directors, when you grow this thing out to 20, is to keep it from fracturing, to keep the binds that ties the conference. You play each other a lot in football, in the athletic field. You play each other as much as possible. And going with no divisions, that's how you succeed. That's how you get your teams. That's how you get Ohio State going to Stanford as many times as you can. This is how you get Purdue going to Rutgers. This is how you get Penn State playing USC. This is how you do it. You go no divisions, at least at first in this new Big Ten 20. Okay? No divisions. 20 schools. That's how we see it. You have permanent rivals. Okay? You have permanent rivals. It can be 2, 3, 4. And then how many conference games do you play? Do you play 9 or 10? The Big Ten have been playing 9 conference games since their new contract that they've been having 9 games for years. Gene Smith has talked about the athletic director of Ohio State that the Big Ten might go to 10 conference games. Okay? But I think that's more have to do with, again, playing each other as much as possible. Not so much about the money, increase money in this new contract. In fact, I don't think it would increase revenues for each school within this new contract. I know there was a report out yesterday. I don't know who said it, and once I do, I'll put it out on Twitter. I'll try to put that out. That the SEC is looking at going from 8 conference games to 9, but it won't change how much revenue they get in. I read that somewhere in this new contract that they signed with ESPN. It has to do with the quality of the content that the SEC wants to put out. 8 SEC schools want to go to 9 conference games, and 8 SEC schools want to stay at 8 conference games, because those 8 schools, more the bottom of the 8 historically football schools at SEC, they want to keep it at 8 conference games to give themselves a better chance of making a bowl for the season, to have a successful season in the eyes of their fans, administrators, boosters. And the 8 top SEC schools want to go to 9 to better their scheduling, to try to get that at large berth when the college football playoffs are eventually expanded to 12 or 16. So SEC is, they don't have a consensus on what they should do for how many conference games. The Big Ten, they're probably having the same division here, the same conflict. The bottom schools probably want to keep it at 9. They better themselves a chance. They want to keep those 3 non-conference games. They're better chance themselves to earn that bowl game, right? And the top teams probably want to go to 10 conference games. Don't know which way it's going to go, but looking at the structure of the Big 20, Big 10 with 20 schools, if you have 10 conference games, of course you play each other more often. Although, depending on how many permanent rivals you have. So let's say there's a 20-school Big 10, and you have 4 permanent rivals. Each school has 4 teams they play every year. And so the other 15 schools get rotated 5 per season. So you'd play each school in the Big 10 at least once every 3 years. Is that good enough? Are we getting around? Are you playing every school enough to satisfy all the administrators, the fans, and everybody? I think so, probably. Now, maybe it's not 4 permanent rivals. Maybe it's 3 permanent rivals that they decide on. This is all being decided now, or they want to decide now. That's why we're talking about this August 15th, October 15th hot window. The announcements of expansion doesn't have to happen in this 2 months, although it very well possibly could. But they need to start making decisions for the future. They want to figure out this structure. Plus, they're gaming this out with their media partners. Media partners want to know this structure. So I think it's going divisionless. 20 schools. This is what we believe to begin with. Okay? And probably 3 permanent rivals each, possibly 4. Now, some people have said, and we have speculated, that what if you had 1 permanent rival? 1 permanent rival with a 10-game football conference, 10 conference games in your schedule. That means you would play every school in this 20-team conference once every 2 years. Once every 2 years. A lot of people would love that in the Big Ten. I know Penn State would love that in the Big Ten. There are schools that would want only 1 permanent rival on their schedule. But there are schools that definitely do not want that. Iowa, for example. Minnesota, for example. Michigan, for example. There are schools that are trying to push back on the 1 permanent rival concept. I mean, what is Iowa supposed to do? They've got 3 historic rivals. They're only going to play Wisconsin. They're not going to play Wisconsin every year, Hawkeyes, right? Minnesota's not going to play, Iowa's not going to play the Badgers. They're only going to play them once every 2 or 3 years, right? Minnesota's not going to play Iowa every year because Minnesota and Wisconsin would definitely play each other every year. So again, there's divisions in this. There's different people pushing different things in the Big Ten. We believe a 20-school conference, no divisions, with 3 to 4 permanent rivals. In all the other sports, you can look at this Big Ten with California, Stanford, Oregon, Washington. It's going to be regionalized. You can look at the basketball, men's and women's basketball, and I would say I would put my money on you cut that country right in half. You'd have the 6 former Pac-12 schools in this model that we're talking about today, and then you add on Nebraska, Iowa, either Minnesota and Wisconsin or Iowa, Nebraska, and Northwestern and Illinois. But 4 of those schools would be part of those 6 West. Those are your 10 schools in the Big Ten West, and then the other 10 schools would be the Big Ten East. And then you play more games with those schools within your division more often in men's basketball, women's basketball, softball, baseball. Go right down the list. Regionalizing in all sports except for football. And of course, there's other sports like wrestling and hockey where the conferences, where it's a smaller list of teams, you keep it the way it is. But the big sports like men's basketball, women's basketball, baseball, softball, you regionalize it. You're not going to have UCLA play Rutgers in baseball that often. Okay? That's how it's going to look. That's how we believe it's going to look with that model. Now, let's just step away from that model, for example, and let's say Notre Dame would have jumped in, or they're going to jump in, right? It makes everything a lot cleaner. Stanford, Oregon, Washington, Notre Dame. You got 5 schools in the Pac, or 5 schools out in the West Coast. Now you have options. Right? Now you have options. Now you could, in the future years, you could do the pod system. Right? In fact, if you're going to go to and we believe this has definitely been talked about over and over again, going to that semifinal weekend in football, right? Where you have that weekend after the rivalry weekend, the last game of your scheduled conference, okay, where you have rivalry weekend. The next weekend is semifinal weekend, where the top 4 schools in the Big Ten football play each other in the semifinal. And then all the other schools would play each other, play a team that's close to them in the standings. It's semifinal weekend. And then the next weekend would be in Indianapolis in the first week of December. They have talked about this. It's a lot easier doing that when you have pods, when you have actually structured 5-team divisions of 4 teams, 4 divisions of 5 teams. That's actually easier to do. We're not going to get in the deep weeds on that today, but for lots of reasons, it'd be easier to do to have pods. But we believe that initially 20 schools, no divisions, 3 to 4 permanent rivals. Okay? Be a lot easier if Notre Dame was included in this. Or if you want to get to the long shot scenarios, lot easier if a Kansas or a TCU was included in this expansion when it comes to structure, regionalization. However, we definitely concede that it looks like it's going to be for the expansion to 20, 16 to 20 is going to be 4 more schools out in the West Coast. There's no way UCLA, USC is going to be kept on an island. So that's how we see this 20-school structure when you add in the model of California along with the other 3 schools. No divisions in football. I know I'm getting a lot of pushback on that because people, and it's natural that people, we want to put it into pods, 4 pods of 5 schools. And those are your permanent rivals in those pods. I suppose if you could have, get this is crazy, but I suppose if you really want to speculate about the 4 pods of 5 schools in football, you could do Oregon and Washington with Iowa Nebraska, Wisconsin, Minnesota. Okay? Or no, Oregon, Washington, Iowa, Nebraska, Minnesota. Something like that. And then take the other West Coast teams and attach it to a few of those Midwest teams and have split those 6 schools out west and create these pods. But we just don't think it's going to happen. Not at this point. Going divisionless. This is what the athletic directors want in the Big Ten. I think this is what the media partners want in the Big Ten. Take the charter planes, take them across the country, play each other. Region doesn't matter. 20 schools. Top 2 schools go to the conference football championship game in Indianapolis, and maybe someday soon that game will be played in Pasadena, California. That conference championship game. Maybe they'll cycle back and forth. I think we'll probably hear a lot more about that later on. That would be fun. So that's how we see it. Again, we'll have later this week, we'll talk about our Pac-12 predictions. We'll get to that USC story. Again, thank you so much for all your support here in the last, every day, but especially in the last 24 hours. We appreciate your comment. If you like this content, please hit the like button. Please share the video. And until next time, please, you all take care of each other. Thank you so very much. Thanks.